Last time on the Bible. The Hebrews are still wandering the wilderness, and they got a bunch of rules. There we go. All caught up.
Good day, my children. Today we shall be looking at the fourth book of the Old Testament, the fourth book of the Torah, boringly named Numbers, as in the fourth number in the Bible. Anyway, so, as a reminder to all those who are, suppose not a reminder, it's a warning to those who are not familiar. This is a secular, left-leaning, progressive reading of the Bible, so do not expect something that affirms your beliefs, but rather something that, unless you're... Let's move on. Let us begin.
The fourth book of Moses, called Numbers. Chapter 1. This book kicks off with a bang because God has Moses and Aaron do a census. And from there, they appoint heads of households and introduce conscription. And then it just goes genealogical and discusses individual family members and their ancestry, which is always a fun time. And quite the banger. The only family that was excluded was the house of Levi. They were to have a special place at the tabernacle of the Lord, and they would therefore not be counted. It's weird how God conveniently chose the family of Moses and Aaron, the leaders of the Hebrews, to be the special family. Weird that. Chapter 2. This chapter just discusses who would lead which tribe. It's basically just a glorified list of names. Chapter 3. Now it changes things up a bit and lists Aaron's kids. More names, yay! The Levites were brought forward and given duties to pretty much serve Aaron and the priests. And then it gave more names. Names of people and what their duties would be. It also said where they would camp, like to the south of the tabernacle, etc., etc. It's riveting religious information, this. Then it essentially details how to do a tax based on population size. Nice to see that governmental finance made its way into this religious text. Chapter 4. There's another census, but this time for the house of Kohath, just giving them some jobs. Then it just gives some specifications on how to move things around, and whenever this Hebrew camp has to relocate, it's just that. So I guess it's always moving around nomadic style. Fun way to live. God always makes sure that these people won't die when they touch holy things in the tabernacle, so at least the movers don't die when they do their job. Cool. Then a census of the house of Gershon. They also have a job now. And then the house of Merari. More jobs. And we're also given the number of people in each of these families. I don't see how this is particularly relevant to religious teachings. But hey, at least they have all the numbers written down. Chapter 5. This chapter tells us the fun fact that all lepers, people who have touched corpses, and anyone who has a bodily discharge are to be kept out of the camp. So they just isolate them. And then it tells us that if you do any crimes, you gotta pay some of the old cash out, plus extra, to those who have been harmed. So it doesn't look like they have a judicial system like we know it now. Okay, so next up we have what happens to unfaithful woman. If you are an unfaithful lady, you get taken to a priest. The priest gives you a special thing to drink. And if you were unfaithful, your thigh will rot, and your belly will swell, and you'll be shunned as a cursed thing. If you're innocent, well, then it's all fine and you can have kids. I mean, at least she isn't murdered outright for her perceived sin, so that's something. But there doesn't seem to be an equivalent for a man. There's this whole thing about jealousy, but not about a man straying, so them double standards are, thankfully, still definitely there. Hashtag men on top. Chapter 6. There's this whole thing about the law of separation, and you can't shave your head and stuff. It just involves ritual and murdering an animal, so, usual stuff. And it lastly tells the priests how to do a blessing for people. So that's nice. Chapter 7. This, much longer than usual chapter, starts with the priest setting things up at the tabernacle. And it's got some sacrifice, some tidying up, some preparing things here and there, all the greats. But the length of the chapter itself is a ruse. You see, every paragraph in this chapter just tells us what different people offered to the tabernacle. So one guy would bring this many shekels, another would bring this many goats, another would bring this many lambs, etc. Overall, there are 12 of these offerings over 12 days, and after that Moses went to have a chat with God. Chapter 8. Here God tells Moses what to do with the Levites, also how to prepare the lamps, how to get the Levites ready for their work with the Lord, and all that jazz. And, interestingly, they could work for God from the ages of 25 to 50. And after that they have to piss off. It does not mention a retirement plan of any kind. Chapter 9. So it's been a year and a bit since the Hebrews left Egypt, and it's nearly time for the Passover again. And God tells them to celebrate the thing he had already told them to celebrate. He also states that if you're away or unclean during the Passover, just do it a month later. It's fine. But if you miss that date, so help me. If you miss and don't offer your sacrifice to the Lord, you will have sinned. Also, if a stranger is with you, they have to observe the custom too. Nothing quite like forcing others to join in on your religious rituals. And lastly, the Hebrews moved camp whenever God's special cloud moved away from its current camp. So they followed a cloud around for a good long while. Chapter 10. God tells Moses to get some trumpets and tells him that 1 toot toot will call the leaders and 2 toot toots will call everyone. It's like a secret club thing. He also says they should use the trumpets when in war. Then they can get an unfair advantage against their enemies. And sometime after that, God leads them away from the wilderness of Sinai and into the wilderness of Paran. I know, pretty awesome. It then goes into some detail about who goes where in this new journey, and then they go for a 3-day stroll with all their possessions. Chapter 11. Some people complained, but that's a bad idea around Old Testament God. And he straight up burns a few of them to death. But eventually they complain again, and this time it's because eating nothing but manna isn't enough for them. They want meat. Then there's some random stuff happening with 70 leaders, but whatever. At least God sent them some quail, so that the Hebrews could slaughter them and eat their flesh. Yum yum. Oh yeah, and God sets a plague on them because they weren't happy to just eat nothing but manna all day. Who knows? Chapter 12. Aaron and Miriam complained because Moses was the only person who God spoke through. And they were also angry. He'd married an Ethiopian woman. And so God got angry and gave Miriam leprosy. But don't worry. It's not permanent leprosy. Everyone begged for forgiveness on her behalf, and so she just goes and lives outside the camp for 7 days, like all the other lepers. I guess that's certainly a way to make people a bit more humble. Chapter 13. God tells Moses to get some people and send them out to Canaan as spies. Why God would need spies, I have no idea, but okay. And once the spies come back with good news, they decide that it's time to conquer some lands. Always the will of the Lord to murder people who are in the wrong place at the wrong time. Chapter 14. Some of the people are afraid of getting killed in war, but Joshua comes forward as the big scary man and tells them to stop being cowards. Then God gets angry at the people complaining and kills some of them. Because why not? And then there's more bloodshed as people who don't listen to God get killed. Wonderful. Chapter 15. Once again, God lays out how the people should give him offerings and how they should sacrifice things when they commit unintentional sin, presumptuous sin, or when they violate the Sabbath. And apparently, violating the Sabbath, which can involve picking up sticks on the Sabbath, can result in a stoning. And then, after all that murder and ritual, it randomly states that God wants tassels on Hebrew garments. Chapter 16. So the people finally get rather annoyed that Moses and Aaron seem to be the only ones God chats to, and so they complain. And they just say that God will totally swing by and tell them what's going to happen. So some people rock up to be angry, and then, then God opens up the earth, and a whole bunch of them fall inside. And then he unleashes fire and kills even more people. And then, because people still complained, he sent a plague. He's a great guy, clearly, and he can take criticism. Chapter 17. Now the people were still kinda complaining, so God tells them to bring their rods. A rod for the head of each household, and to put them in the tabernacle for God to choose which rod would be the rod of the new leader. And one of them blossomed. And it was Aaron's rod. Big surprise there. So Aaron gets to keep being a leader, and the rest of the people can now shut the hell up and move on with their lives. Chapter 18. God now makes sure that Aaron knows he's a priest and that his family is going to serve him. Cool. God also tells him about some of his duties. And it must have been fun for Aaron's family, the Levites, seeing as they just get looked after by the people, by God's rule. So that's pretty nice for them. Good to know that God had a welfare state. Oh, but they mustn't forget to make their offerings for this, okay? Chapter 19. So this chapter goes into another animal sacrifice and then focuses very specifically on cleanness. Like how you're unclean if you touch a dead body, or you're in the room with someone when they die, and then you have to do a special ritual to clean yourself. It's just that stuff again, which we already saw in Leviticus. Chapter 20. So they go to a new place and there's no water, so Moses asks God to help, and he tells Moses to do the whole hitting a stone with your rod thing, and water comes out, and then God speaks to him and says, "Because you did not believe me, to hallow me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. Chapter 20, verse 12. So that seems a bit dickish of God, punishing them all for what Moses and Aaron did, which was apparently to lack faith. Then it jumps to some people going out and chatting to the king of Edom. They want safe passage through his land, but he refuses. And that's that then. Then utter tragedy strikes. It's time for Aaron to die. Moses takes his brother's priest's robes off him and gives them to Aaron's son Eleazar. Then Aaron dies. Fun times. Chapter 21. Time for some war. Oorah! They first fight the Canaanites and win. And then the people complain about being in the wilderness again because apparently they don't learn. And then God sets snakes on them. And Moses has a special bronze snake made as a ward against them for some reason. But anyway, they then moved around a bunch until they came upon the Amorites. They want safe passage through the Amorites' land and they refuse. And so the Hebrews kill them all and take over their cities and towns. Then they defeated another group from Bashan and took their land. So they're going on quite the conquests now. Chapter 22. So here we discover that God appears to be the God of more than just these Israelites. Because a group called the Moabites was afraid of this new group that was killing everyone, and so their leader contacted a buddy, Balaam, and asked for help. But he refused because God said no. So that's quite interesting, isn't it? There are other people who worship God, but only one particular group is considered the blessed people. But then God changes his mind and Balaam goes with the Moabites. Then he has an argument with the donkey. It's kind of confusing. He seems to have an argument with God or an angel for no real reason. It's a really weird chapter. And he's some kind of a prophet type person, I guess. Chapter 23. Balaam tells Balak, king of the Moabites, to prepare a special altar. And then God tells him to just screw over Balak and bless the Hebrews rather than curse them, which is just kinda hilarious. Then Balak, obviously not having learned anything, takes Balaam somewhere else to curse the Hebrews, and he just kinda refuses because God said no. And then Balak takes him somewhere else to curse the Hebrews. I don't know how this guy still doesn't get it. It's great. Chapter 24. Once again, Balak wants Balaam to curse the Hebrews, and again he blesses them instead. It's just, wow, it was all a failure. Chapter 25. Some of the Hebrews decided to go on over to Moab and maybe do a little Baal worship. And worshipping other gods is a no-no to God, of course. So he told Moses to have them all killed. And so Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, went and rammed a spear through two such offenders. And God was so impressed that he decided to bless him and his descendants. Nothing gets God harder than people killing in his name. And then God tells Moses that they need to kill all these people for bringing these Baal-worshipping bastards to the Hebrews. Chapter 26. This chapter is just a census of people over the age of 20. And it's straight up just a list of names. Once again, always useful in a holy book. Chapter 27. Time for some laws again. Yeah, boy. It talks about some inheritance laws. If you got no son, your daughters get your stuff. If you have no daughters, your brothers get your stuff. And if you have no brothers, well, your father's brothers get it. And if you got none of those, then it just goes to your closest relative. Doesn't mention what happens to orphans, though, I guess. And now it's time for some new leadership. God is still angry at Moses for that whole water thing from earlier. So he tells him to give some power to Joshua. So now we got a new Hebrew leader. Whoop, whoop. Fun. Chapter 28. Time for the fun stuff. Offerings. I know a new leader was just named and all that jazz, but we need to step away from that narrative because we have other things to discuss. Just, by the way, this new leader isn't going to do anything for the rest of this book, so hush up. Okay, let's get to that offering discussion. Alright. We've got daily offerings, Sabbath offerings, monthly offerings, Passover offerings, and Feast of Weeks offerings. Some of these are just regular old burnt offerings, but many of them involve animal murder, as per usual. Chapter 29. Okay. So I know you're probably going to wonder why this wasn't included in the last chapter, and you'd be right to point that out. But, alright, now it goes into Feast of Trumpets offerings, Day of Atonement offerings, and Feast of Tabernacle offerings. So that's fun. Yeah, it's fun. It also doesn't give us anything other than that. Don't see why those offerings had to be split up into 2 chapters. But whatever, am I right? Oh, God. Chapter 30. Now we get into some vow territory, which means be ready for some sexism. Oh yeah. So, if a man makes a vow, he must adhere to that vow. However, if a woman makes a vow and she's young and her dad hears it and says no, then the vow doesn't stand. Cool. And if she's married and her hubby hears it and says no, then it doesn't stand. So basically you need permission from a man to make a vow. So women can't make any promises on their own because, I guess because they're women. It also at one point refers to if a woman makes a vow through a rash utterance from her mouth. Chapter 30 verse 8. Then her husband can overrule her. Woman and their rash mouths making stupid decisions because they're woman. Woman. However, if daddy or hubby gives the go-ahead, then all vows will be implemented, so that's nice. Hashtag feminism. Chapter 31. Now it's time for war. It's time to kill those pesky Midianites. And so they went and murdered them all, stole their stuff and kidnapped their women. Because who cares about women from another culture? Right? We just keep them as property. They come back from war and Moses is a bit angry. He doesn't want all these women. The ones who have had sex are evil. Duh, so kill them all. Save the virgins though. I guess they can be used as breeding fodder or something. My God, this book is full of moral principles. But also, of course, seeing as murder makes you a bit unclean, all the warriors have to stay outside the camp for a good while until they're clean again. All good. Then they separate all the booty, giving half to the soldiers and half to the congregation. So that's nice. At least those who instigated the war get to keep some of the spoils as well as the murderers themselves. Awesome. Chapter 32. Some people want to settle down, and Moses tells them that if they do, they won't get the inheritance God promised to all the Hebrews who left Egypt. But those people are pretty adamant. They do, however, state that they will help the Hebrews conquer the land before returning to their new place. And Moses, as well as God, seems pretty alright with this happening. So long as they stick by their oath to help the other Hebrews, of course. So, now there's some allies of the Hebrews who are now technically from other tribes, which is fun. Chapter 33. First off, this chapter begins with a straight up recap of the events that led to this point. So it's just saying where they camped, where they left, where they went, etc. So this is like a next time on the Bible kind of thing. Well done, Bible, for adding in recaps for those who missed a few episodes here and there. However, it then goes into how the big man in the sky spoke to Moses about how to enter the land of Canaan, and that all the Hebrews need to kill everyone in their way and destroy all the Canaanite homes and holy places, which is real nice of him. You see, this land is for the people of God and not for anyone else. Chapter 34. This is just political stuff. God tells Moses where the borders of the Hebrews' land will be. I mean, at least God is giving his chosen people a small slice of land rather than giving them everything. He's not too greedy, so that's nice. And then God tells Moses who will be the leaders who divide the land. Politics, woo! Divine nepotism, yeehaw! Anyway, chapter 35. It starts off with God telling Moses how many cities to build for the Levites. Cool. Now there is one genuinely cool thing, or at least cool for the time. There are special cities of refuge that need to be formed. And these are basically cities for criminals who are awaiting trial. They cannot be killed while in these cities. However, this is more for unintentional criminals, like manslaughter people. Now, if you're chilling in one of these refuge cities and you have to leave, and someone finds you, and gets vengeance on you, well then they don't have to stand trial for murdering you. These refuge cities are like a waiting area, and you can't leave the waiting area or you'll be killed. It seems that their death penalty required at least some legality behind it. You had to have more than one person against you, so it's not just a he said, she said kind of thing. So that's somewhat nice at least. Chapter 36. And now we come to the final chapter of Numbers. Are you expecting a good send-off or just something kind of random? Well, if you had money on the question of female inheritance, you'd be right on the money. So there's a problem these peeps have. What happens if a woman inherits stuff and then marries someone from a different tribe? Because then the inheritance of one tribe goes to another tribe. And Moses is like, well, you can only marry people, in your own tribe. So that fixes the problem.
And so concludes another anticlimactic book of the Bible. It just kind of ends again. Oh well. Next up is Deuteronomy in a few months, if you want to see what happens next time. And remember, for all the ladies, keep it in the family, right? Oh yes, exactly. The Bible. Anyway, ta-ta for now. And remember, keep moral. As the good book tells us.